Good morning,
Recording in progress.
colleagues. Good morning to the DM, Honorable Godlimpi. I see he's in the meeting with us. Thank you for that, Honorable DM. To all the officials, the departmental officials, our committee officials, you are most welcome. Colleagues, could I ask Madia to please flight the agenda for us? Thank you very much, Madia. As you can see, we have the agenda in front of us. Is it visible for everybody? Would anticipate it is. There's only one item that has to be discussed, and that's the briefing by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition on the Protocol of Women and Youth and Trade to the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area, as well as the Protocol on Competition to the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area, whereafter we will have questions and answers, and then our internal matters will be the consideration and adoption of committee reports on the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement protocols on women and youth and competition. And before we close, I would also like for the committee to consider a letter that was received from Bolt, so that we show transparency and get your view on it. After that, it will be closure, and we trust that the meeting will flow accordingly. Now, before we start, can I just ask Madia if there are any apologies?
Yes, Chair, we have got an apology from Honorable Modisi, who did indicate that he's attending a sandbox event today. And we also have an apology from the Minister, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. In light of that, could I ask for a mover and a seconder, please? Honorable Pinar.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson. Morning, colleagues. I move for the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you very much, Honorable Pinar. Just before we start, your signal is not very good, so if you could move, it would be appreciated. Honorable Nodada.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, everyone. I second the adoption of the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Honorable Nodada. So we can now proceed. Honorable DM, before I hand over to you for your introductory remarks and the indication of who will be taking us forward, I just want to say that it is pleasing to see that with regard to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, South Africa has led from the front. Earlier on, we implemented tariff concessions ahead of many others, and currently we are already trading on nearly 1.8 billion in exports under this framework. And this was done in the past year and a half. And that, to me, shows absolute commitment. Even though there's a lot of praise with regard to that, we must realize that this leadership comes with responsibility. And if we are proactive, we must also be honest about the gaps, about the incomplete rules, the weak implementation by others, and how we make sure these protocols deliver real benefits for women, youth, and businesses here at home. So I trust that we will be hearing from you, DM, on how we're going to take it forward, because it is something that lies close to all the committee members' heart, and we would like to see it take our women, youth, and any other businesses forward. So in light of that, Honorable DM, the platform is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Good morning to all the members of the Select Committee. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And as you started by saying, Honorable Chair, you are quite correct. South Africa has been trying to lead from the front, both in encouraging the other member states to accelerate the ratification of the protocols to get the AfCFTA into practice, but also in just demonstrating that we as a country do move with speed when we have to do that. And you are also correct about the volumes of trade that South Africa has realized since January 2024 up to date. The 1.8 billion rands, and it covers value-added exports as well. And in that sense, it does provide support to South Africa's job creation in the value addition sectors. I must also point out that on the 15th, which is in the next 2 weeks, I think, I will be going to Egypt, Cairo, for a trade ministers meeting to discuss exactly the progress made around the AfCFTA and some of the protocols that we want to finalize and have them ratified, one of which is related to the auto industry as well. So we are doing our level best to push for progress on that score, but in a manner that defends South Africa's competitiveness as well, so that we don't end up being eroded. Now, as you recall, honorable members, the agreement that establishes the African Continental Free Trade Area entered into force on the 30th of May 2019. And South Africa deposited its instrument of ratification during the 32nd ordinary session of the African Union Heads of State and Government meetings held in Addis Ababa in February 2019. And as the chair had raised, once that was done, South Africa has traded to the value of 1.6 billion in the period since 2024 to date, 1.8 billion rands, to demonstrate our commitment in that regard. Now, the 36th ordinary session of the AU Assembly of Heads of State and Government that was held in February 2023 in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia adopted the Protocol on Competition Policy, whereas the Protocol on Women and Youth in Trade was adopted by the 37th Ordinary Session of the AU Assembly of Heads of State and Government in February 2024. Now, we as South Africa are required to ratify the protocols in accordance with Article 26, which is the entry into force of the Protocol on Competition Policy, and Article 25 of the Protocol on Women and Youth in Trade, in order for these to apply to South Africa. Now, the protocol shall enter into force after the deposit of the 22nd instrument of ratification. We have already gone at lengths to get legal opinions from the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, as well as the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. And they have both confirmed that these protocols are not in conflict with the domestic law of the Republic of South Africa and are acceptable from an international law perspective. Now, I have come to this meeting with representatives from the department, one of whom is Ms. Nikki Kriche. She will do the presentation on this work and get into the detail of what are the benefits that we will realize through these. And so, Honorable Chair, may I hand over to the team from the Department of Trade and Industry to take you through the details on the AfCFTA protocols. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable DM. We then hand over to the presenter. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable members. Chair, I'll take you through the ratification of the AfCFTA Protocol on Women and Youth in Trade, as well as the ratification of the AfCFTA Protocol on Competition. Chair, we thought that it may be helpful just to give a quick background again in terms of where we are with the AfCFTA, in terms of the implementation and also the negotiation of the outstanding issues. As the DM has indicated already, we have the negotiations of the AfCFTA was launched at the African Union Summit in June 2015. Currently, there's 54 countries that have signed the agreement, with only Eritrea that have not yet signed. And of that 54 countries that have signed, there's 49 countries that have already ratified the agreement and is state parties to that agreement. The only countries that have signed but not yet ratified is Benin, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and South Sudan. If you look at, because we also negotiated, many of the countries negotiated as part of customs unions. And if you look at the different customs unions on the continent, currently SACU, the Southern African Customs Union, that South Africa is of course part of, all of the members have ratified the AfCFTA. And in terms of the Central African Economic and Monetary Community, CEMAC, all of the members have also already ratified. In terms of the 6 members of the Eastern African Community, only South Sudan have not yet ratified the agreement. And in terms of the 15 members of the Economic Community of West African States, only Benin have not yet ratified this agreement. As DM has also indicated, South Africa deposited its instrument of ratification on the 10th of February 2019, and we were one of the 22 ratifications that was needed for this agreement to enter into force that occurred on the 30th of May 2019. In terms of the progress, currently on the negotiations, Chair, as you will be aware, and the members, the agreement, when it was signed, it was the agreement establishing the AfCFTA area with 3 protocols that was already concluded, being the protocol on trade in goods, trade in service, and the protocol on dispute settlement. But there was, under these 3 protocols, there was still work that we need to do and finalize, including on trade in goods, the different tariff offers that countries have had to submit. So currently there is 24 countries that have gazetted their tariff schedules. So the tariff offers for 90% of their tariff book, that is category A. That has already been submitted by many of the countries, and of those 24 have gazetted, meaning that we can now, those 24 countries can start to trade under the AfCFTA in terms of their tariff schedules that they have submitted. It's important to note, Chair, that of those 24 countries, 11 countries is part of the Southern African Development Community, SADC, and we already have a free trade agreement with SADC that is fully implemented, and our trade with those 11 SADC countries are continuing under the SADC agreement that is fully implemented. So the new market access that we currently have under the AfCFTA is with the 13 non-SADC countries, being Algeria, Cameroon, Egypt, Ghana, Kenya, Morocco, Rwanda, Tunisia, Burundi, the Gambia, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Uganda. As I indicated, Chair, all of the SACU member states have already gazetted their tariff concessions, so their category A tariff schedules, and all of the SACU countries are already trading under the AfCFTA. We have, in terms of South Africa, we published our tariff schedule and started to trade under the AfCFTA on the 26th of January 2024. And we are trading with those countries that we've indicated that already also gazetted their tariff schedules. Nigeria and Ethiopia has just recently gazetted their tariff schedules, so we are in the process of making the amendments to the Customs and Excise Act to include Nigeria and Ethiopia.
I'm sorry about that, Ms. Krieger. Mardia, are you able to find out where that comes from to mute them, please? Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Krieger.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, Chair, as I've said, Nigeria and Ethiopia has just recently gazetted their tariff schedules. So we are in the process of amending the Customs and Excise Act in South Africa to include Nigeria and Ethiopia as one of as under the list of countries with whom we can trade under the AfCFTA, and that should be finalized soon. And then also our trade with these two countries under the AfCFTA can start. In terms of the protocols that we are still busy negotiating, some of those are finalized, and I will get later in the presentation on which ones have been finalized, and we are in the process of ratification of those protocols, of which, of course, these two protocols that we are discussing today is part. It is also just to highlight again that South Africa, as part of SACU, has adopted a 10-year phase-down period for our Category A offer, so the 90% of our tariff book. It happens in equal installments over 10 years, and this is applied retrospectively from the 1st of January 2021. So currently we are in the 5th year of the tariff phase-down for the 90% of the tariff book that have been published as part of our offers under Category A. The DM has already, and you, Chair, have already indicated that since the start of South Africa's trade under the AfCFTA, we've already exported about 1.8 billion rand to the continent under the AfCFTA, and in terms of imports, we have imported about 960 million rand under the AfCFTA. In terms of challenges in implementation, Chair, I think you also alluded to some of these. There is some problems in terms of non-adherence to commitments in critical sectors from some other countries, and some rolling back of commitments that have been made, and we are addressing this in the relevant committees under the AfCFTA. And as the Deputy Minister has indicated, there's also a Council of Ministers meeting that is coming up on the 15th and 16th of September, where some of these issues can be further discussed as well. In terms of the ongoing negotiations under the Trade in Goods Protocol, we still have to negotiate the outstanding 10% of tariff lines. So that is Category B, which would contain 7% of our tariff lines. That is sensitive, and where there would be a longer period of phase down. And then Category C, that is 3% of the tariff book that would be excluded from any tariff commitments at this stage. We also, as you've also indicated, still negotiating some of the outstanding rules of origin, and we need these rules of origin to be able to trade. Even if there's a tariff commitment, a tariff reduction commitment, the rule must first be finalized. So currently, the outstanding rules covers clothing and textiles and autos, and it's expected that by the African Union Summit in February 2026, we would be able to adopt the rules of origin, the outstanding rules of origin, and then also the finalized schedules in terms of Category B and C. We're also still busy concluding some of the negotiation of the annexes and regulations under various protocols. In terms of trade and services, Chair, there's 50 member states that have submitted initial services offers in the 12 priority sectors. So there's 12 services sectors, and we have prioritized 5 of them, being financial services, communication services, transport services, tourism services, and business services. Currently, the only countries that are implementing their schedule of specific commitments in these 5 priority sectors is the 5 EAC states that have already ratified the agreement, being Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, and Tanzania. South Africa has finalized its specific commitments in the 5 priority sectors. It was approved by Cabinet in March 2025, and it has been submitted to the AfCFTA Secretariat for verification and discussion, and it is foreseen that at the upcoming Council of Ministers meeting in September, these schedules submitted by South Africa would be adopted and approved by the Council of Ministers, and it then will be going forward for adoption at the AU Summit in February 2026, whereafter we would be able to also publish our schedules of specific commitments in these 5 sectors, and then also start with the negotiation of the specific commitments in the 7 other services sectors. In terms of phase 2, Chair, those are the protocols that we are negotiating or have finalized negotiations on competition policy, on investment and on intellectual property, as well as the protocols in digital trade and the protocols on women and youth in trade. We have finalized the annexes where necessary for the protocol on competition policy and the protocol on women and youth in trade, and this is now coming to you for ratification. In terms of the protocol on digital trade, we have finalized the annexes for the protocol on digital trade, and it was adopted by the AU Summit in February 2025. So we will shortly, Chair, also bring the protocol in digital trade to this committee for consideration for ratification. In terms of the protocol on investment, there is still an annex that we are finalizing. And once that annex has been finalized, it's an annex on dispute settlement for investment disputes. And we will also be bringing the protocol on investment to the committee for ratification. And in terms of the protocol on intellectual property, we are still negotiating various annexes under that protocol. And once that is finalized and adopted, it will also be brought to the committee for consideration and ratification. Chair, if I can then go to the specific protocol on women and youth in trade that is before you for consideration for ratification. As the DM has indicated, the African Union Summit held in February 2024 adopted the protocol on women and youth in trade. The broad objectives of this protocol are to maximize the opportunities presented through the implementation of the agreement by addressing some of the challenges facing women and youth specifically in trading, and also trading specifically on the African continent. The specific objectives of this protocol are to support and enhance the effective participation of women and youth in intra-Africa trade, to improve the inclusion of women and youth in trade under the implementation of the AfCFTA, to also achieve sustainable economic development at national, regional and continental levels. One of the specific objectives is also to look at how we can strengthen the capacity of and the access to opportunities for women and youth in trade on the African continent, and then also how we can promote value addition and innovation for increased imports and exports by women and youth in trade, and also looking at how we can support the inclusion of women and youth in regional and continental value chains, and also what support measures can be provided to promote the formalization of trade activities of women and youth on the continent. In terms of some of the key provisions of the protocol, of course, one of the biggest issues that affects all traders really, is non-tariff barriers. So we are also looking under the protocol how we can deal with specific non-tariff barriers that affects women and youth in trade and how this can be eliminated. And then also we're looking at some of the provision on inclusive socioeconomic development to promote and facilitate the empowerment and the effective integration of women and youth in trade. We're also looking in some of the provisions and in the protocol how we can promote participation and policy formulation and national AfCFTA implementation of women and youth, also to take part in the formulation, implementation, and the review of policies and programs that relate to this protocol on women and youth in trade. We also, one of the provisions also deals with promoting harmonization of national, regional, and continental programs to support women and youth in trade so that we can get maximum value out of what we are doing nationally, of course, but also what is being done across the continent in terms of assisting women and youth in trade. There's also a provision that deals with encouraging members to enhance access to finance for women and youth in trade, and also to provide assistance for development of productive and export capacity of women and youth in trade. Another very important issue is trade information, and it is many times difficult for smaller businesses or women and youth businesses to access trade information. So there is also a provision that deals specifically about commitments from member states in terms of making available trade information. There's also a specific focus in terms of intellectual property rights on establishment of mechanisms to assist women and youth in trade in the registration and use of intellectual property rights. And in terms of competition that we will come later to, there is also a specific provision that looks at competition policy to promote fair and equitable competition to support the entry and effective participation of women and youth-owned and women or youth-led businesses in the AfCFTA market. And also there is a provision that look at how we can assist women and youth businesses in participating in formal trade activities under the AfCFTA. One of the issues that was raised strongly during the negotiation is that also, especially women, are sometimes the victims at borders and so forth of harassment and related practices. So there is also a provision in terms of protection against harassment and related practices that governments must undertake. In terms of digital trade, this of course is also very important and a very fundamental way for women and youth businesses to get into the trading environment. So we also in the protocol deal with how to ensure that the digital regulatory and institutional framework support women and youth in trade to facilitate access for them to digital trade platforms, tools and solutions in trade, and also measures to facilitate and support business associations and business clusters of women and youth in trade and women and youth owned or led micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. Finally, Chair, we are also working on the development of a ministerial regulation for preferential market access. So this regulation will look specifically at what member states also can do to assist women and youth-owned businesses to trade under the preferential market access that is provided under the AfCFTA. In terms of the importance of this agreement for South Africa, of course, the protocol on women, youth and youth in trade aims to ensure the use of the AfCFTA agreement as a job-driven strategy with special focus on expansion of labor-intensive sectors and those with strong rural and women employment linkages. And in view of the opportunities provided by this protocol, Chair, and I think this is very important also for this committee to note that there is a need for key government departments at national and a provincial level to jointly explore and enhance the implementation of national policies and provincial policies, of course, targeting women and youth. For example, incentives and export promotion activities, trade-related technical assistance to women and youth-owned enterprises, to look at safety at border posts and so forth, to really assist our women and youth-owned businesses in South Africa to make optimal use of the advantages that is provided under the AfCFTA agreement. And with this market now instead of the 65 million people in South Africa, a market of 1.3 billion people on the African continent. In terms of the current status of the protocol and in the ratification process, the protocol was tabled, as DM has indicated, in Parliament on the 4th of June 2025. It's been considered and recommended by the Portfolio Committee and approved by the National Assembly in July 2025. And the protocol, of course, is now serving before this committee for consideration and report. Chair, in terms of, if I could quickly move on to the protocol on competition, the objectives of this protocol is really comes from Article 7 in the AfCFTA agreement that provides specifically for the development of a competition protocol. The protocol on competition was adopted in February 2023 at the 36th AU Summit in Ethiopia. And what the protocol does is it establishes a continental competition regime. The purpose is really to enhance competition within the AfCFTA for market efficiency, for inclusive growth, and for structural economic transformation across the African continent. That is, of course, also one of the aims of Agenda 2063. In terms of what the protocol focuses on is to address anti-competitive practices across borders. So it does not regulate what our competition authority will do within the borders of South Africa. So this addresses anti-competitive practices across borders, and the sort of practices that is targeted is cross-border cartels, mega mergers with continental-wide impact, and then also the abuse of dominance by large multinational firms and key sectors, including in e-commerce. So the importance of the protocol for Africa and for South Africa specifically is it underscores the need for the development of a competition policy to address competition issues, including establishing a mechanism to address cross-border cartels within the continental markets, which are not adequately regulated by existing national or regional competition authorities. It also look at regulation of mergers between firms generating significant revenue within or from the continent, and also look at addressing anti-competitive practices by dominant firms that reside outside of the African continent, such as platforms like e-commerce and social media firms. The protocol sets forth rules that regulate the conduct of firms and not that of state parties. So it looks at firms trading across borders in Africa. The protocol seeks to regulate competition issues related to economic activity on the continent that has a continental dimension, except those falling within the jurisdiction of individual state parties. So just to, again, to emphasize, Chair, that our competition authority will continue to look at competition issues in South Africa, and where allowed or provided for under the Act, also where it has some cross-border border impact. So it is just where there is no specific provision in domestic legislation that the protocol under the AfCFTA will become relevant. In terms of the importance of the agreement for South Africa, again, the protocol reinforces South Africa's ability to combat international anti-competitive practices and align to South Africa's policy objectives and existing national legislation. It supports the establishment of a conducive environment to promote industrialization, innovation, and sustainable economic development. It looks at consumer welfare. It also promotes sharing of experience among competition authorities, and South Africa's competition authority capabilities and legislative framework are very highly regarded, Chair, as you and the members will know, not just continentally, but internationally. The protocol also complements South Africa's current competition legislative framework and supports the creation of fair African markets. Therefore, as I've indicated also before, there's no legal or financial implications in terms of our current competition framework. To the extent that certain instances give rise to concurrent jurisdiction, such as instances, those instances shall be governed by the regulation on the concurrent jurisdiction. So in terms of this, we are still busy with dealing with and drafting those sort of regulations. In terms of the next steps at the AfCFTA level, as I've indicated, we are still busy drafting specific regulations to deal with issues such as where there is concurrent jurisdiction, how we will deal with that, and once that has been drafted and agreed at the committee level, it will go to ministers for approval and then to a subsequent AU summit for adoption. In terms of the current status of ratification of the protocol on competition policy, the protocol was tabled in Parliament on the 4th of June 2025. It has been considered and recommended by the Portfolio Committee, and it's been approved by the National Assembly in July 2025. And again, of course, the protocol on competition policy is before this committee now for consideration and a report. Jay, just in terms of the importance of these protocols for provinces, the protocols offers an opportunity for various industries, private sector, and SMMEs to engage in cross-border trade through these, and of course women and youth, through these legal frameworks, and to maximize, therefore, the opportunities that is provided by the AfCFTA. It provides an enabling environment for inclusive participation in intra-Africa trade by addressing anti-competitive practices and by promoting the participation of women and youth enterprises across South Africa in trading under the AfCFTA. Again, as I've mentioned earlier, Chair, it's important to ensure that we enhance coordination between national government, relevant authorities, and also provincial agencies in the implementation of the AfCFTA and its respective protocols if we really want to get maximum value under the AfCFTA. It will also be very important to note that enhanced advocacy and capacity building at the provincial and local levels will remain imperative to ensure an inclusive approach to the implementation of the AfCFTA, and that there is value that is derived from the AfCFTA across sectors and across provinces in South Africa. Thank you very much, Chair. If there's any questions, I will try to answer those, but there is colleagues here from the competition branch and from the Competition Commission and other colleagues from the department that can also respond to any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Krige, for the comprehensive presentation. Colleagues, the presentation has been delivered. Can I please see if there are any hands that would like to go up to ask questions? I see Honorable Pinar, Honorable Nodada. Sorry, it sounds as if myself and Ms. Krieger are both barking along today. All right, I see Honorable van den Berg. Let's take those first three hands and then we'll come back for a second bout. Honorable Pinar?
Thank you, Chairperson. I just want to make sure I'm audible this time.
It sounds like it. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you. Thank you, DM. Thank you for the presentation. It's enlightening and it's very encouraging. I think as a country, due to world markets and tariffs at times, we came to the realization as a country we are going to have to rely on a lot more than certain markets. And I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. I think it's encouraging. Our trade with other African countries, I believe, sits at somewhere around 17% at the moment. And I think that should be a lot higher. I think Africa worldwide is an open door for our economy to ensure we build up as far as possible. However, there are some constraints, and you did cover most of them in your presentation. But some experts in the field, say, this is all good and great, but what about one of the big restraints with regards to trade in Africa is cross-border and cross-border problems with regards to facilities, ports, roads, railways. Those areas are not up to standard.
Honorable Pinar, Honorable Pinar. Sorry, can I interrupt, please? Can I ask you to move?
Chairperson.
Can I ask you to move around to see where we can find a better reception? Thank you.
Is this maybe better, Chairperson?
Yes, that sounds
better,
much better. Yes, thank you. You were on the restraints on the cross-border. Thank you.
Yes, experts within the industry who would love to trade with the rest of Africa quote our railway, roads, and ports. Not necessarily our ports, but sometimes countries where we want to trade with. The Department of DTIC, I know, doesn't have control over these issues at times. But are you engaging with our own Minister of Transport, Baba Creasy, and the relevant other ministers of other countries to ensure it doesn't have help, we have the agreements in place, but practically on the ground, our industry still struggle to actually get the products to these relevant countries. What is your department doing to improve that situation? Chairperson, that's my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honorable Nodada.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just greetings to you and the whole team of the honorable members, Honorable Deputy Minister and your entourage. Chair, I don't have questions, but I just want to welcome the presentation. Also, as a woman in South Africa, I just want to appreciate the progress made in the inclusion of women and youth in Africa free trade area. That is much commendable, Chairperson, with the hope that this protocol will be flagged as one of the priorities of the department. DM, I'm much appreciative of this. I just want to encourage you to continue, include women and youth in the rural areas. You know how poverty is affecting these people right there, so that at the end of the day, we find the improvement of economy in South Africa. Because with the involvement of women and youth, those are the bones of the economy of the country. If they are included, we hope to see much change in the economy of this country. That's all, Chair, for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Honorable Nodada. Honorable van den Berg.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone. There must always be a devil's advocate, and today I'll try not to be the worst one, but I still need some clarity on slide 11 of the presentation, and that is about the protection of intellectual property as it is stipulated for women and youth. But at the same time, the Expropriation Act that was recently passed by implication also includes intellectual property, meaning that the South African government can expropriate this property. So on a lighter note, it now seems that government either only wants to expropriate from males as youth and females are protected. In this case, do we have contradicting laws? Will South Africa also have a look at interior legislation to align with the free trade policy as we expect from other countries? And then this policy also refers to international and anti-competitive practices, and it's a good thing. Apart from the confusion with gender issues, the proposed policy seems to be with a good intention, as long as South Africa can protect itself from cheap, inferior commodities entering the South African economy through the African corridors. We should look at proper implementation of the Consumer Protection Act, and we can advocate and dust it off to align internal lawfare with what we are promoting outside. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mabilu.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Once again, I will say good morning to the members of the Select Committee. Good morning and greetings to the DM and the team and the staff that is accompanying the DM. No, Chair, my departure point is that the background that was given by the DM and the context of the protocol itself, for me, it is quite assisting, it is quite helpful, it is information sharing, and as public representatives, it empowers us to understand the developments so that we are able to move with developments. I think the broad thrust thereof is worthy to be supported, especially around the women and the youth. So I think from now on, as public reps, we'll have a better understanding of what is at stake in terms of the massive opportunities that this AfCFTA provides for us. I mean, the entire Africa represents quite a sizable number of dense population. And that the time is long overdue for intertrade in that context. So I think the developments are quite positive. Well, obviously, we note the increase in exports to a tune of 1.8 billion, etc. And we are heartened by the fact that the challenges have been flagged and they have been addressed. But we will be concerned, DM, that the question of non-adherence to the commitment in critical sectors and the rollback some of the commitments, I think that area should be strengthened, and I'm happy that there's a move towards addressing those contextual challenges. Obviously, we support the broad thrust of the protocol, especially the objectives. But one thing that has been clear to me, DM, as I listen carefully, the emphasis correctly has been on the women and the youth. Commendable, 100%. Maybe we should get an understanding why at this stage people living with disabilities are not reflected. I understand the protocol deals with women and youth. But we know, in conclusion, because I'm not asking a question, I'm making a comment. We know that our country is a strong advocate and champion of the vulnerable group, including women with people with disabilities. Now, throughout the presentation itself, there has been no reflection on that. So maybe if we can be clarified as to why that very important aspect is not considered, because we also know that there are women who are in business. And given the fact that we're living in a technologically advanced society, some of these activities would not need physical mobility, but technological advancement. So maybe that question would arise to say, why have we not included the people with living with disability, and is there any appetite on the continent to embrace that? So overall, DM, this is quite what I can term as a game changer. Once this protocol can be implemented across the countries, it's a game changer, and it will address the question of economic growth, poverty, unemployment, and inequality. This is a huge potential. It is worthy to be supported. And my last point is that this kind of development should be mainstreamed so that it is not only a domain for us as public reps to understand, but ordinary men in the street must have an appreciation of what is happening at this level. In other words, we must domesticate it, localize it, and ensure that we empower the masses so that they don't become necessarily passive recipients of development, of reconstruction and opportunities, but they become active agents of change, active agents of development. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Chair. And DM, this is quite mouth-watering. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mabilu. Okay, I also have a few questions, but before I pose the questions, I just want to reiterate what Honorable Nodada and Honorable Mabilu have said, because it was also two of my focus areas are the women and youth in rural areas, and how we're going to ensure that they benefit from these trade agreements, as well as our people with disabilities, because they cannot be excluded. We talk the talk with regard to disabilities, but we don't actually toe the line. But in view of that, I would just like to know, we say that we are currently trading under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I'd just like to know how we go about protecting our exporters when partner states don't honor their commitments. And if you look at the rules of origin on autos and textiles, they're only due in 2026. Can you possibly give me certainty, rather, let me say, what certainty can we give to local manufacturers right now? The protocol promises access to finance and safer trading for women and youth. What are the practical mechanisms, and what are the budgets, the programs, the monitoring that will take place to ensure that these promises actually become a reality? And how do we formalize informal trade without pushing small traders out of business? Then, with regard to the competition on protocol, if we heard Ms. Krieger speak about the cross-border cartels, and I see PPC and Lafarge, they seem to be the bigger enemy within these cross-border cartels. And we know that it's cost Africa billions. How quickly will South Africa's competition authorities be able to act under this protocol? And then concurrent jurisdiction is also mentioned. Who takes the lead with regard to this when there's a clash, and how do we avoid leaving businesses in legal limbo? Then you also spoke, Ms. Kricher, to in the presentation calling for provincial and municipal involvement. But I'd like to know what resources or capacity support will they actually get to carry out these new responsibilities? Let me just go down. Honourable Pienaar touched on the poor roads and rail, even though it's not your jurisdiction, but it's something that must be discussed. I just want to see here. All right. I'd also like you to give us some feedback on forex trading cartels, if there are any, and then the transnational drug trafficking controls. While it's not related to formal trade, we all know that these criminal networks significantly affect border integrity. And I'd just like to know how we're going to address that. And that's it from me. Thank you very much, Ms. Kricher, once again for your presentation. As I said, it doesn't sound as if you are feeling very well, but you did very well. And DM, if I can then also ask you after the questions have been answered, whether you will just do a closing remark, after which we will carry on with our internal matters. You're more than welcome to sit in, but you may be excused. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. If I think the issue that has been raised by Honourable Pienaar in terms of the infrastructure issues across the continent is very valid. And we have, as South African and as the DTIC, raised that during the negotiations, but also in interactions at the African Union, and even now at the G20, that if you want to really see benefit in terms of the implementation of the AfCFTA and see an increase in trade, then you also will have to deal with infrastructure development across the continent. So we are working closely with the African Union, without the NEPAD that are looking at specific infrastructure projects across Africa, and specifically in the trading corridors that will enhance our ability to trade and to make use of the preferences under the AfCFTA. In terms of the protection of intellectual property, so what this protocol provides for the protocol on women and youth in trade is that countries must look at mechanisms to assist women and youth-owned enterprises to register intellectual property. Now, I will not respond to the other issue raised in regard to this, but it's very difficult and very expensive in many instances to register intellectual property, and it can be very valuable, of course, for a business if you have these intellectual property rights that is registered. So we want to see how we can assist the different businesses, women and youth-owned businesses in this regard. There is a specific protocol that deals in detail with intellectual property and with different intellectual property provisions. It deals with geographical indications, trademarks, copyrights, patents and so forth. And that we are still busy finalizing the different annexes to. And that intellectual property protocol will come once adopted by the African Union heads of state. It will come, of course, also to this committee for ratification, and then maybe we can have a more detailed discussion in terms of the different types of intellectual property and how that will be implemented by, those commitments will be implemented by South Africa. In terms of the issue raised by Honourable Van der Berg in terms of cheap and inferior goods, and that we need to ensure that those do not enter South Africa, and the Consumer Protection Act. This, of course, is another very important issue. Our standards authorities implement stringent requirements in terms of product specifications. These are implemented at the border, and the fact that we have now the AfCFTA and that there is preferential trade of goods, for example, across borders, do not mean that we do not implement the different requirements that we have in terms of country requirements that we have in terms of standards. And we work closely again with the South African Revenue Services, with the Border Management Agency, and with the different government departments that implements the different regulations in terms of health and also project standards, to ensure that those are implemented also for the goods that comes from other countries in Africa under the AfCFTA. In terms of questions from Honourable Mabelo, in terms of comments, in terms of the non-adherence of commitments, this is for us a very important issue. We want to ensure that from the beginning this agreement are implemented across the African continent, that countries that are part of the agreement and that get benefits of that agreement also in the South African market, that they do also implement their commitments. We are firm in our commitment to implement what we need to do and what we are obliged to do under this agreement, and we'll work closely with other countries to ensure that they do the same. In terms of our, and I thought I should highlight this, that in terms of the legislation in the Customs and Excise Act that implement our 90% tariff schedule, so where we are providing now preferential market access on specific products to countries that are in other countries in Africa that are implementing. We have made sure that in that implementation legislation, there's clear provision that is made that if other country in Africa are not implementing their commitments in terms of tariff liberalization, so if they've made a commitment to liberalize a specific product and then they don't do it, or they roll back on that commitment, that on the basis of reciprocity, South Africa will then also suspend preferences to that country. So that is provided for already in the implementation legislation, that we ensure that there is reciprocity and that reciprocity is fully implemented by everyone that is taking part in preferential trade. In terms of the issue of people with disability raised by Honourable Mabelo and also the Chair. Chair, of course, women and youth enterprises will also include people with disabilities, and so they're not specifically excluded, but I do hear the concern raised that they are not specifically mentioned. So it is something that we will take under advisement. South Africa, as you've mentioned, is one of the leading voices in also advocating for the rights people with disabilities, and we will see how we can make that very clear and have a much more clear reference to that also in the work that we are doing. We will at some states also review the agreement, and we can look at how to then very specifically also in this protocol include people with disabilities. Although again, I want to emphasize that people with disabilities is not excluded. They would be part of course, women and youth-owned enterprises. But let's a very valid point, and one that we will definitely take up to see how we can address that. In terms of I think that the issue on the different questions asked about the competition protocol and how we will deal with concurrent jurisdiction, with forex trading cartels. I will hand over, if I may, Chair, to the colleagues from the Competition Commission and from the competition branch that is here. I see a number of them here, so I'm not sure if the commissioner or the deputy commissioner will which one will take these questions, but if I can hand over to them, Chair, for this. And then just to finally to say that in terms of the drug cartels, of course, this is not something that falls under the authority of the DTIC or is really looked at in terms of these different protocols that we are dealing with. But it is an issue that is getting high attention with the relevant departments, and we are also interacting with them in terms of how to ensure that under the AfCFTA, only those goods that can enter do enter South Africa. Can I hand over then, Chair, to the competition colleagues? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kruger. I think all the questions related to her have been answered. So over to the Commissioner or the Deputy Commissioner. Thank you.
Chair, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, thank you. You are audible.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, just on, I think the issue on, firstly on cross-border cartels, as Ms. Kruger has already indicated, before the implementation of the protocol, there are a number of regulations that are still being considered and negotiated, and before their adoption, those will trigger the implementation of the protocol. And secondly, Chair, for the protocol to be implemented, the continental authorities need to be established. Both the Continental Competition Authority and the tribunal. So these cross-border cartel provision in terms of the protocol will not be implemented until we have finalized those. The draft regulations have been considered by the competition committee in May. It was hosted here in South Africa in Cape Town, together with the first heads of authority meeting that took place in Cape Town. Most of the regulations, I think, particularly the ones establishing the authorities, there were no concerns relating to those, except there were concerns in relation to some on thresholds and referral of complaints. So until those have been finalized, and we are hoping they will be presented before the Committee of Ministers, which Deputy Minister Godlimpi spoke about on the 17th of September. So that process is still ongoing, Chair, before the provisions on cross-border cartel from the protocol are implemented. However, Chair, I wanted to raise this. We are already engaging on, at least from a South African point of view, in prosecuting cartels, even cross-border cartels. And the Forex case that you were speaking about, Chair, is a case in point. And we, as you are aware, the matter went before the Constitutional Court, and one of the critical issues relating to that matter is issue of jurisdiction on the effect of cartels that are happening, even though the actual conduct is happening outside the country, but has an effect in South Africa. And the Commission's approach is that the wording of Section 3(1) of the Competition Act allows for the Competition Commission to prosecute any economic activity, including cartel conduct, even though it's happening outside the country, but has an effect in South Africa. So that's the one. That's the two issues, Chair, on the cartel that I wanted to speak about. In relation to concurrent jurisdiction, Chair, I think Ms. Creeper earlier indicated it's only those matters that have a continental effect that will be heard by the Continental Authority. With regard to concurrent jurisdiction, that does not take away the authority or the jurisdiction of the Competition Authority. There was a provision in the draft regulation, Chair, that sought to require the authorities to refer matters to the Continental Authority should there be should we reach some threshold. However, I think there has been an agreement that we would rather have some collaborative and cooperative approach to deal with those matters so that we don't place firms in limbo. And this also relates to some of the threshold regulations that we have, Chair, because those, I know that there are some countries, and I think these are the big economies on the continent, who are concerned about the level of the threshold, both for major regulation and dominant position. That may be problematic, that we wanted to make sure that we have the right level of threshold in respect of those. Chair, I think these were the three questions that were raised for the Competition Commission, and I hope we have clarified those, Chair. Thank you very much.
Commissioner, thank you very much. Yes, that has given me peace of mind and clarity. Colleagues, can you just indicate, are there any questions that have not been answered? According to my take, they have been responded to quite well. I do not see any hands, and in light of no hands going up, can I hand over to our Honourable DM for his closing remarks? Thank you. Mardia, can I just ask, is Honourable Godlimpi on the platform? I don't see his name.
No, I don't see him. I think he might have gotten disconnected, Chair.
Okay.
Gotten disconnected.
All right, colleagues, in light of that, the presentation has been given. We all know where we stand now with regard to the African Continental Free Trade Agreements. And in light of that, I would then just like to thank them once again, the department and all the officials involved. And should you wish to be excused, you're more than welcome to be excused so that the committee can carry on with its internal matters. Thank you very much. Mardia, okay, can I ask that you just flight the reports for us, please? Okay, colleagues, the first report is the one on the protocol on women and youth in trade to the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area dated 3 September 2025. Now, Mardia has taken it up with our legal division, and for us to be able to pass this report, we need the majority vote according to section 232 of the Constitution of a minimum of 5 votes. So could I ask that those in favor please raise their hands so that we can either adopt or not adopt the first report. Thank you very much. Okay, silence is golden.
No, Chair. Okay. Chair, just clarity, the first report is it dealing with what the presentation we have just received?
Mardia?
Also,
Yes,
Also-
Mr.
Yes,
Mabilo. Yes, Mr. Mabilo.
Yes,
The presentations we received were on 2 protocols, the protocol on women and youth and the protocol on competition. This report, if I can maybe just read through it, it speaks specifically to the protocol on women and youth. So yes, it's specifically relating to the presentation the committee just received.
Thank you for the clarity, Chair. I support.
thank you very much. All right. I see Honorable
Chairperson,
Pienaar. I see
Chairperson,
Honorable.
before that,
Who am I speaking to now?
you're speaking to no data.
Yes, Honorable Nodada.
Yes, I had raised my hand even before Honorable Mabilo. I wanted to check how are we voting? Are we voting individually or according to the provinces? How
No,
do
it's,
we vote?
according to Mardia, it's not individual votes.
Actually,
we
Chair,
just.
Yes, Chair, if I can just come in, Chair. We have checked with procedurally with our other colleagues, and when it comes to international agreements, it's done by majority. So
That's
you've
right.
already indicated members should raise their hand if they are in support of the report.
That's right. Thank you very much. Now, just for record purposes, I see the hands of Honorable Pienaar, Honorable Farmer, Honorable Mabilu, Honorable Sithole. So that gives us 5, but and then everybody's hands are up. Can I just ask that for record purposes, every member indicates as such, starting with Honorable Pienaar?
Thank you, Chairperson. I vote in support of this.
Thank you very much. Honorable Farmer?
Thank you, Chairperson. Support.
Thank you. Honorable Mabilu?
Thank you, Chairperson. I vote in favor. Support.
Thank you very much. Honorable Sithole?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I support.
Thank you very much. Let's go through everyone. Honorable Nodada?
Thank you, Chairperson. I vote in support.
Thank you. Honorable van den Berg?
Yes, Chairperson, I support the report.
Thank you. Honorable Lamini?
Thank you, Chair. I vote in favor of the report.
Thank you very much. And is that Honorable Mukuna?
Yes, I'm not. I'm voting against the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Mardia, in light of that, we have an overwhelming support and 1 against. Thank you very much. Can we flight the next report? And this is exactly the same. It will be handled the same. So it is the report on request for approval by Parliament on the Protocol on Competition to the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area, recommends that the Council approves the agreement in terms of Section 2312 of the Constitution. If I see the hands now, I see the hand of Honourable Sithole, Honourable Nodada, Honourable Farmer, Honourable Dlamini. So let's start with Honourable Sithole.
On which report, Chair?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
No, I'm saying on which report?
The one that I've just read you.
It's the one. It's the one competition, Honourable Sithole.
Okay,
The competition
no,
protocols. Thank you very much. Honourable Nodada.
Thank you, Chair. I support
Thank you very much. Honourable Farmer.
Thank you, Chair. I support the report.
Thank you. Honourable Dlamini.
Thanks, Chair. I vote in favour of the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Mabilu.
Thank you, Chair. I vote in favour of the support for the report.
Thank you very much. Honourable Pienaar.
Thank you, Chair. I vote in favour of the report.
Honourable van den Berg.
Thank you, Chair. I'll also vote in favour of the report.
Thank you very much. Honourable Mukuna.
Thank you, Chair. I vote against the report.
Thank you very much. Madia, for record purposes, a majority vote has passed the report with one member voting against. Thank you very much for that. Madia, can we please just flight the Bolt issue? Colleagues, I received a letter from Ms. Yappi regarding the e-hailing platform. The matter was then discussed at a management committee meeting because we were not quite sure how this fits in with the committee's mandate. And myself and Honourable Dlamini, together with all the officials of this committee, together with Advocate Ali, discussed the matter, and the minutes of the meeting were circulated to each and every member by Beverly, I think yesterday or the day before. No, we met on Monday, so it must have been yesterday. I would like Honourable Dlamini as the whip of this meeting so that it doesn't appear as if I'm taking credit for everything, just to inform the members why we reached the decision and then ask whether the members are in coherence with what we have decided or whether they would like us to rather entertain the issue. We were of the opinion that it is more within public works, roads and transport. But can I just hand over to Honourable Dlamini to give you some background information? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members. Indeed, we had a main committee where we were considering this letter in preparation of this meeting the letter to be presented before the committee. With the advice of the legal and within our own mandate, we felt strongly that there is no need for us to discuss this particular a letter, nor give the writers an opportunity to appear before us. The relevant departments are the ones who can be able to hear them and assist them. Indeed, there are issues such as the issue of economic development and so forth,
which is within our own mandate, but entirely the contents of the letter and the request itself suggest that this letter has to be referred to, or the advisor, the writer be advised to write to the relevant chairperson of the select committee to consider their issues. So I think that is what we said, to say, even if there are issues that are related to us, but entirely the contents of this letter really needed the relevant department, which is your roads, transport, or public works. That is what basically we said as MENCO. So we are going to leave it to the committee members to have a bite on it, whether they support us or not. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Dlamini. Before I hand over to you, Honourable Farmer and Honourable van den Berg, Mardia, if I remember correctly, you mentioned something about Public Works, Roads and Transport having received a similar letter. Is that correct, or did I understand it incorrectly?
You understood it correctly, Chair. In fact, what I did is that I contacted the people who sent the letter, and I asked them, listen, have you also engaged with the Select Committee on Public Works and Transport? And they said yes. According to them, what had happened is that they had a discussion with the chairperson, and the chairperson had basically indicated that they left it to the officials to basically find time in the fourth term to consider this matter.
Thank you very much for that. Honourable Farmer?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I support the view of the Management Committee. I'm not convinced that we should be ones to be engaged with by business straight. I think they should go to the departments, and from there, then I don't think we can open ourselves up to sit down with all the businesses in the world. I'm not convinced that should happen that way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Farmer. Honourable van den Berg?
Yes, Chair. To me, this letter speaks to a larger problem. We know of the violence that we've had with the taxi and the Uber drivers also. And there's quite a stranglehold in South Africa with in terms of public transport concerning the taxis. And the taxis, they are not paying tax. So we must decide as a committee if we do have the appetite to enter into this large hot fire. But I personally think we should open up the coals and see what comes out, because ultimately free enterprise has to reign, and the Bolt and the Uber and all those people have to have a freedom of delivering a service without being strangled by a taxi business. So if it is a safe space, then we might be able to enter into it and see what solutions we can bring forward. It will definitely lead to some legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable van den Berg. Honourable Nodada?
Thank you, Chair. I will share my view. To me, as much as we are Economic Development Select Committee, and the Bolt people are operating for business purposes, but I don't think we can be in a position to resolve their issues. To me, their issues rest with the Select Committee on Transport. That's where all these stakeholders, including taxis, could be engaged and get a resolution about these issues. Yes, it affects their business, but who can resolve it? To me, it lies with transport. So I think they should be redirected to transport. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honourable Pienaar?
Thank you, Chairperson. I tend to agree with the recommendations as laid out by the committee whip. I think it's also important that we need to be take note of the fact that even if we were to engage with them, legally so, what changes are we able to bring within the sector? And that is not in our mandate as an economic entity. It would be then for the Department of Transport. So instead of getting ahead of ourselves and engaging and spending time as a committee on this issue, which I'm sure everybody has an opinion on, at the end of the day, we do not have the mandate as indicated by our legal team as well. So let's not waste the committee's time with regards to even if we do want to make changes or recommend legislation, it won't be in our mandate. So it would be to an extent, Chairperson, unwise of us to engage with this entity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Pienaar. Before we close this matter, could I just ask Mardia to come in as to the rationale that we reached? Thanks, Mardia.
Yes, Chair, thank you, Chair. And in fact, members have already spoken to it because if you look at the letter from Ethico representing BOLT, even in the letter, they acknowledge that some of the issues does not reside within the mandate of the committee. The request kind of touches on issues of economic development, but when it comes to regulation of the e-hailing industry, it does primarily reside with the Department of Transport and to an extent provinces and also municipalities. So not entirely within the mandate of our committee. And one of the reasons why we also touched base with our procedural legal as far as this particular issue is concerned, and I think Mr. van den Berg also raised the issue. Any interaction with the e-hailing industry at this particular point is incredibly delicate given the recent developments and the recent murder of the Bolt driver. I think there's been quite a few. So obviously there's a lot more issues that will come out of this engagement that is not necessarily just restricted to economic development. And it's for that reason and it's for that rationale that we recommended that this issue actually be referred to the Select Committee on Public Infrastructure and Transport.
Thank you very much, Mardia. My sentiments exactly. Honourable Mabilu?
No, Chair, thanks. I think the recommendation is tabled by the Management Committee and as well as outlined by Honourable Farmer. That's the way we must address this matter. We can't entangle ourselves in a matter that we are not competent enough to bring to finality. So I think the logical thing would be to say this recommendation or this decision that we have just reached must be communicated to them accordingly so that we don't leave them hanging or having unnecessary expectation. Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honourable Mabilu. Yes, indeed, Mardia will now draw up a letter to them, and the fact that the Department of Infrastructure, Roads and Transport have already indicated to Mardia that it is with their departmental officials. I think we have covered our base well. And I must also agree with Honourable Farmer, if we were to entertain every letter that passes our desks with regard to economic growth and job creation, we will not get around to doing what is actually within our mandate. So members, thank you very much for your support. Before we close the meeting, I would just like to again, I think I touched on it yesterday, remind members that we have a meeting next week, Tuesday, before we go on oversight with Honourable Modise's committee to Mpumalanga. And please just note again that it is virtual and it starts at 8:30. And we must try to see if we can finish by 12:30 at the latest to afford members the opportunity to get to Parliament for the plenary on Tuesday afternoon. In light of that, thank you very much for constructive engagements and may you have a wonderful afternoon. The meeting is therefore adjourned. Thank you.
Recording stopped.